My guest today is Gilles Bourgeois.
The purpose of my presentation today is to deliver the proof that the greenhouse effect is actually a mystic construct that deceives and enslaves the minds of even good and rational people like most of you watching here today. We have an ancient vulnerability that we must grow up from, the vulnerability of chosen cognitive method, the way that we each use our own mind. The cognitive methods of objectivity versus subjectivity, or reason versus mysticism. And mysticism can be either secular or supernatural. And the climate religion I'm going to talk about today is a secular religion. It is not science at all. Our ability to experience emotions, to conceptualize, and to categorize are natural abilities we each have from our own mind. And this ability is critical to our own individual survival and happiness in this real world. These are not visions into an alternative realm ruled by an omniscient omnipotence, nor ruled by a consensus groupthink. We cannot simply wish our needs and values into existence. This is what religious fanatics of every sort try to do and fail, resorting to ever greater levels of violence as reality refuses to conform to their wishes. And this whole presentation is around that framing, basically. It's philosophical. This is the content and structure of my presentation. After introducing myself briefly, I will outline within 5 or 6 slides and within about 20 minutes or so, the driving forces of Western civilization. My aim is to introduce a deeply important topic, the most important topic there is, morality, the realm of chosen values, and how the valid understanding of what morality is being attacked by various forms of religion, such as climate religion. I will prove why morality cannot be based on any kind of mysticism. The remaining topics I will talk about will become much more straightforward in the frame of morality, the kinds of choices that we make. It's really about moral authority. Real science has moral authority, and this is the driving motivation behind the hijacking of science. I'm going to quote Ayn Rand here. The power of morality is the greatest of all intellectual powers, and mankind's tragedy lies in the fact that the vicious moral code men have accepted destroys them by means of the best within them. So today I will try to expose this vicious moral code that motivates the climate religion, along with its more viable and actually ethical opposite, the morality of rational egoism. So this presentation is a combination of philosophy and science. So this is a recent photograph of myself. I was born and raised in Western Canada, and I grew up to become an expatriate professional in the oil and gas exploration, development, production industry, spanning nearly 30 years, living in 7 different countries and 3 continents. Today, I'm happily married to a beautiful Italian spouse, and I'm retired here in the beautiful country of Italy. And I've recently become a grandpa. Now, this is particularly relevant because Italy is an exceptional jurisdiction for learning about history and philosophy. And it's philosophy that drives the evolution of societies, both good and terrible societies. Yeah. My work experience demanded unflawed understanding of thermodynamics principles. Yeah, so a lot of my presentation will be about those very same principles related to energy balancing, along with complex thermal engineering, complex topics around pressure, volume, and temperature, PVT, both liquids and gases. But in terms of climate science, it's actually very straightforward, as you will see. So my aim here today is to arm good and rational people with the knowledge necessary to sweep away unnecessary details, of which there are many, and to focus upon what is essential. Good and rational people like ourselves are capable of changing our minds when presented with verifiable, repeatable facts, logic being the rejection of contradictions. So I'm one of the reasons I'm so happy here is because I've been extensively deplatformed. LinkedIn, which is a really bad one for me, Facebook, Twitter, and even X, because I am an explicit heretic of the greenhouse effect religion. And I will prove today that it is a religion, as you will see. Okay, let's get into the power motivations. I'm not going to read everything that's on this slide, but I will direct your attention right now to in the bottom center here. And if you go and visit the Vatican Museum, you'll likely come across this masterpiece. The masterpiece is called The School of Athens, and it was drawn by Raphael. It is a depiction of the philosophical duel between Plato and Aristotle. These Greek philosophers have a profound influence upon our world today, and I will outline this influence here today. Now, references will be made to Plato, Aristotle's methods throughout this presentation. This slide outlines the meanings of those references of subjectivity and objectivity. Plato and Aristotle represent two opposing metaphysical worldviews. By metaphysical worldviews, I mean our ideas about the nature of the universe. Plato was a mystic, establishing a dual reality worldview, prioritizing an imaginary ideal world as more real than reality itself. Knowledge about this idealized utopia, known as the world of forms, was innate and was acquired via contemplation. Aristotle, on the other hand, was more a scientist who believed that there is only one single integrated reality ruled by natural laws, which are knowable, but had to be discovered using experimentation and observation. These metaphysical worldviews lead to two opposing epistemologies. And by epistemology, I'm talking about our method of knowing. And these are the epistemologies of subjectivity and objectivity. These are having a tremendous impact upon us today. So subjectivity is born from the metaphysics of mysticism, and objectivity is born from the metaphysics of reason. And these are fundamental choices we each have. The use of grunt tribal savage instinct versus making use of our own senses together with our own mind. Subjectivity is the doctrine that feelings are the creator of facts, and therefore man's primary tool of cognition. If men feel it, declares a subjectivist, that makes it so. Religion, all forms of mysticism, is subjectivity on steroids. Power lusters adopt as objectivity. So they make themselves feel superior. Objectivity is choosing that reality exists independent of human consciousness. That one's consciousness is not to create the object, but to perceive it. And you'll see here in this presentation how they've created a different version of the sun than what it actually really is. So that knowledge of reality can be acquired only by directing one's attention outward to validated versus fabricated facts. And we're living in a world now of a lot of fabricated facts. These opposing epistemological methods result in opposing moral doctrines, the mystic-based morality of altruism and the reason-based ethic of rational egoism. The morality of altruism dominates our cultures today. It is a moral doctrine of human sacrifice disguised as care, goodwill, and benevolence to your fellow man. So one of the key points I want to make here is that we're confronting a fake science, and fake science is totalitarian, seeking to have power over people. But real science, those of us who are real scientists, we have the actual moral authority because we're about acquiring power over nature by people. Yeah, we empower people with knowledge and methods to make our lives better and happier. In this one slide, I've summarized 2,400 years of the history of philosophy. So it's worth it for people to take the time and read the writing. There's not that much writing there, but I want to just highlight that there's three essential steps, and in each one of those steps, we have a deep personal set of choices we can each make. And if I can make reference to America's founding fathers or British Enlightenment thinkers, they all thought the same way on these three steps. And that's the big difference in the culture back then to what we have today. Today, we've become a lot more mystical, what's written in the red. So religion is an early form of philosophy. The first attempts to explain the universe, to give a coherent frame of reference to man's life and a code of moral values were made by religion before men graduated or developed enough to have philosophy. And philosophy was first developed in ancient Greece, and that's why I wanted to bring ancient Greece here. So I ask you, what are Enlightenment ideas? The Enlightenment being what created the success of Western civilization, what created the United States of America, what created all the wonderful advances in technology that we have today. The Enlightenment was Aristotelian in origin, not Judeo-Christian, because original Judeo-Christianity is a radicalization of Plato's philosophy. The essence of the Enlightenment was a metaphysics of a universe ruled by knowable natural laws that are absolute, stable, and firm. An epistemology of reason and logic applied upon common sense perceptions, and an ethics of rational egoism. And by rational egoism, I mean self-esteem, self-development, happiness, and prosperity. These essential philosophical ideas are within your own free will to adopt for yourself. Be more selfish, choose to love your own life and all else you hold dear. Morality is a central theme in philosophy based upon what we choose to believe is the nature of the universe, i.e. the metaphysics, along with what we choose to believe how we know it, the epistemology. Ethics, or morality, is about what value choices we ought to make given the metaphysical and epistemological foundations we have chosen. Morality is the realm of chosen versus imposed values. Tragically, our societies are motivated by the mystic-based morality of altruism to exist for the sake of others. So rather than the morality implied in America's founding, but not made explicit, of Aristotelian rational egoism, the morality of pride, accomplishment, and self-esteem. Okay, I'm going to just touch a little bit on Rome, and I'm not going to read what's on the slides, but hopefully people will read it as well. So shown on the photograph there is the Arco Etrusco, and it's the oldest stone arch that exists in Europe, and it's here in the city where I live in Perugia, Italy. So it's very insightful to frame of Roman history into two main phases. There's the Roman Republic, followed by the Roman Empire. So on the Arco Etrusco here, and shown in the little red box is the carving Augusta, yeah? And that's the name of the first emperor of Rome, Augustus Caesar, who carved that in 27 BC when he first became emperor. And he carved his name upon that arch after crushing local rebels during 2 decades of long triumvirate conflict following the assassination of Julius Caesar. So up until Julius Caesar, Rome was a republic. And then after Caesar was assassinated, there was a lot of civil war, and it became a dictatorship empire. So when the Roman Republic ended, that was the beginning of the end of Rome, essentially. So the Roman Empire evolved to become a welfare state where the government provided for the needs of their citizens who became dependents on the government. The government ultimately resorting to inflation to finance the welfare needs of its populace. Welfare statism is an explicitly Platonic political concept that is extremely dangerous and prevalent in today's world. Welfare statism is what motivates the climate religion. So morality involves choice. Choices can be wrong. Yeah, we can harm ourselves with our choices. Self-harm is motivated by subjectivity, while self-construction is motivated by objectivity. Yeah, so values enhancing your own life as the standard of objectivity. Subjective versus objective is a cognitive method determined by choice. Yeah, we can each choose this. Can anyone think of any ancient moral doctrines we have that promote self-flagellation? Self-flagellation is what we're doing to ourselves in a very big way, and it's past the time to stop it. And for anybody who sees these slides, I just want to direct your attention to how the United States was created in very much the same way the Roman Republic was. Yeah, they created a set of laws that everybody could read, and these were enforced. And the Republic grew, and it grew very powerful. Then it became corrupted, and a few centuries after it became an empire, it all came crashing down, causing 1,000 years of dark ages. Then around the 13th century, Aristotelian philosophy was rediscovered, and Western civilization rebuilt itself again. We have millennia-old traditions that advocate the primordial morality of altruism, the doctrine of prioritizing the needs of all others before those of your own self. It is this doctrine of morality that motivates policy, i.e. the use of force upon people, to the growth of the welfare state. Power lust appears as a self-interest, but it is actually a self-sacrifice. The need to conquer and control other men, women, and their children is actually a renunciation of reason and any sense of ethics. The selling of your soul is a real thing, and it is the ultimate outcome from the morality of altruism. And I think most of us here hold a great deal of value about our environment. We want to take good care of it. We want it to be sustainable for the future and for our children. And it's a very important value to all of us. Good, intelligent, honest, hardworking, benevolent people like us need to learn and understand the distinction between altruism and benevolence and to never equivocate the two. Yeah. Altruism is the ethic of human sacrifice disguised as care, goodwill, and benevolence to your fellow man. I urge all of you to be more selfish, to develop self-esteem, to preserve your love of life and all else that you hold dear. Altruism, the heart of our moral doctrines, claiming that our existence is for the sake of all others and our highest moral duty, virtue, and value is self-sacrifice, is an ethic of unchosen obligations. Yeah, consider all the unchosen obligations we're taking with, with the green energy. It's not something that we ask for. So these are obligations that must be honored, regardless of one's own needs, desires, or values. Ultimately, necessitating policy, the use of government force, to extract our sacrifices. So the growth of the welfare state that is effectively restoring legalized slavery. Yeah, altruism is the moral premise of all collectivism, and I'm talking about political ideas such as socialism, communism, fascism, religious theocracy, and other forms. Okay, I'm just going to outline the history of Western civilization here with the splitting of the Roman Empire, and that splitting was the beginning of the Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and on the Eastern side, they never got any Aristotelian influences, making them more vulnerable to communist dictatorship. Another really interesting point here is that during medieval times, Arabs and Persians were comparatively more advanced than Westerners. And most people call this the Islamic Golden Age, but it was not Islamic. It was Aristotelian. And then when Aristotle was brought over to the West, a couple of very important priests by the name of St. Albertus Magnus and St. Thomas Aquinas came across this Aristotelian doctrine and translated it from Arabic to Latin. And that whole exercise rescued Christianity, rendering it at least semi-rational. So this thing about Thomism is vitally important to Western civilization, and why Christianity, along with Judaism, it deserves to have some indulgences. So I won't condemn them because they're religion, because they have some merits to them. It was radicalized Platonism that destroyed Rome, creating a 1,000-year-long period of dark Middle Ages. It is the same radicalized Platonism that destroyed the comparatively advanced medieval era Persian cultures, and it is the same cause of communism, fascism, of our climate religion. America's founding was the main accomplishment of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment that followed. The merit and success of Western civilization is Aristotelian, not Judeo-Christian, a radicalized form of Plato. Aristotle's philosophy had major influences to both Judaism and Christianity, rendering both cultures more rational and thus more civilized. The central ethic morality of Aristotle's philosophy is that of rational egoism, the opposite mystic-based ethic of self-sacrifice, i.e. altruism. Yeah, so in the golden box there, I summarize in a simple paragraph the meaning of Aristotle's philosophy. The distinction between being a witch doctor and a scientist is deeply philosophical and begins with a chosen metaphysical worldview. Our ideas about the nature of the universe are a matter of choice, and choose we must. It is a life or death decision between a mystical worldview and a rational reason one based upon known facts, acknowledging what is not known yet to be discovered. So the point here I want to make is to know what you don't know is knowledge itself. And that way you can be motivated to improve that situation if you're honest about yourself. The essence of Aristotelian philosophy is written in a short paragraph, and it is this philosophy that is the essence of America's founding. And it is also the essence of the scientific method. The Jewish culture was more positively affected by Aristotle's philosophy than Christians and any others. As a consequence, they practice a better method of thinking. Objective thinking is a chosen cognitive method that is superior. People enviously hate the Jews because of this. It's not that they are superior, but that they make superior choices in many cases. Something each and every one of us can do as well. Okay, now we're going to get into some science, and we're finished with the philosophy. Now let's talk about radiation energy balance. Basically, the modern greenhouse effect is a religion that completely distorts reality by using the most stupid math physics ever in the history of science. So here, where we're being victims by deception by word games. In this case, the word averaging or the average. So we know that language can be used as a weapon against us, as language is actually our method of concept formation. Communication is merely in effect of having language. Words can be used to deliver lethal misconceptions. I think by now we're all becoming more familiar with the word games being played upon us now. So what's happened here in calculating the greenhouse effect, they've equalized the night with the day. And by doing this equalization, by spreading the power of the sun over the day and the night, the climate religion deletes 3/4 of the energy from the sun. By averaging, in quotation, the solar intensity across both the day and the night sides of the Earth, energy is taken away from where it actually exists in the daytime and distributed to where it does not actually exist, the nighttime. So our actual spherical Earth becomes modeled as a flat Earth without night or day. So what we have here is energy deletion clown science that violates energy conservation principle, a fundamental principle of energy physics that is violated by naming it averaging. And I will elaborate upon this further because this is a Platonic methodology. The powerful thing about focusing upon dividing the sun by 4 is that the climate religion has no choice but to defend the merit of this practice. They're forced into a corner justifying an implication that direct sunlight causes frostbite, because by dividing the sun by 4, it becomes a minus 18 degree Celsius sun, rather than getting a sunburn from a real 121 degrees Celsius sun that we have. So in the Earth-Moon orbit, the power of the sun has 121 degrees Celsius heating potential. So in addition to the amateurish averaging blunder that I've mentioned already, there's also the non-linearity in converting radiative flux to absolute temperature via the Stefan Boltzmann law. On top of this, the physical necessity to have an adequate temperature contrast to produce an adequate amount of energy transfer heat from the sun. So all energy transfer requires a temperature contrast. And when you delete the sun, there's no longer a temperature contrast or an adequate temperature contrast. And you can't model getting energy from the sun appropriately. So again, spreading solar flux across the surface of the Earth, as has been perpetrated by dividing the sun by 4, violates energy conservation law. It deletes 3/4 of the sun's energy. The ultimate implication of this is that there is no greenhouse effect, nor is there such a thing as greenhouse gases. It is all a religious dogma masquerading as science. Okay, a little bit we'll get a little bit deeper here into Plato's math, so where ideology creates facts. The subjective Platonic method where feelings and ideology creates facts. The misuse of arithmetic. There are very many other examples of this, but climate religion is maybe the worst one of all. By averaging the sun over the surface of the Earth, climate religion deletes 3/4 of the sun and then resorts to creating enough energy from magic cow farts and magic plant food to reconcile observation. It is really that absurd, an absurdity hidden under the guise of averaging that has hoodwinked many good and rational people. Redistributing energy from where it actually exists in the daytime to where it does not actually exist in the nighttime is not averaging, but is violation of energy conservation principle. The practice deserves the public derision of being a masturbation exercise. Yeah. Energy balancing the Earth's energy with itself, not with the actual sun. Now we're going to do it the right way. Now we will perform a correct astrophysical energy balance. It is actually very simple using the common sense of Aristotelian method, i.e. that the facts drives the mathematics. The energy balance work we are doing involves known energy quantities leaving the Earth as a whole. We're thus interested only in the energy quantities coming in, which occurs during the daytime only. Energy coming in through the surface area of a disk, and that leaving through a surface area of a sphere. Internal processes are irrelevant as we're measuring against what exits the globe as a whole. Solar energy expressed in radiative flux, i.e. in watts per meter square, that intercepts the Earth, which occurs in the daytime only, is quantified by the area of a flat disk having radius r of that of Earth's sphere. Infrared energy that emanates from the Earth is quantified by the area of Earth's sphere having the same radius, but because it's a sphere, it has 4 times the surface area. The fundamental unit of energy is joules, not meters square, and that of power is watts, which is joules per second. So both joules and watts need to be conserved. Thus, the number of joules exiting the Earth from around its entire day and night surface area should balance with the number of joules coming in from the solar input disk. And voila, it does. Yeah, only now it is more dispersed as per the second law of thermodynamics. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. Here, I will summarize the correct application of the laws of thermodynamics using a new physical unit, watts per 4 meters square. This is a very convenient way to demonstrate both the conservation of energy and the dispersion of energy that's taking place in this real world. The great deception of climate religion's greenhouse effect is to utilize valid geometric considerations to delete energy, 3/4 of what's actually present, and naming this an average, and to then partially compensate this with magic energy creation from magic energy creating plant food and cow farts. Surface areas in this case must instead be used to quantify the energy expressed in watts per meter squared, not to delete it as has been perpetrated. You cannot redistribute joules from where they actually exist to where they do not actually exist. So essentially, this is a communist redistribution that deletes energy. It violates energy conservation principle. The ultimate implication of correct energy balancing is that our atmosphere actually acts as an energy conductor, not an energy barrier, i.e. a blanket. Our atmosphere actually serves as a giant ventilation and air conditioning unit powered by the sun's 121 degrees C heating potential. Now that we're done with the radiation energy balance, now we're going to get into some thermal energy physics, and it's not that difficult either, a little bit more, but not that much more. In the troposphere, the part of our atmosphere where all the weather exists and where we live, thermal energy transfer dominates the thermodynamic complex of processes energized by the low entropy shortwave radiation being delivered by the sun. Again, the math that proves this is very straightforward. All known thermal energy transfer processes have direct proportionality with temperature contrast. That of radiative energy transfer only has a proportionality with the temperature contrast to the 4th power. This means that in a medium having adequate gaseous matter with kinetic energy, i.e. our atmospheric gas, the kinetic energy of molecules has orders of magnitude more energy than that of infrared radiation. In a thermal environment like ours, a given amount of temperature contrast will transfer orders of magnitude more energy than if that contrast existed in empty space, i.e. is radiative only. And this is expressed by the math involved in inverting and then comparing a directly proportional relation and a relation proportional to a quartic root. And shown on this slide, I have an illustration of the actual sun's solar spectrum in comparison to that of the infrared of the Earth, and there's quite a big difference. You'll see other versions where they're both the same, and that's just communist equalization. This here is the real world. Earth's infrared radiation is high entropy waste energy that is ineffectual. An infrared flux of 240 watts per meter square has a heating potential of only minus 18 degrees C or 255 degrees Kelvin. That is it. It cannot warm anything up more than that, regardless of what the photons and the molecules do. The amount of energy determines the heating potential. The sun, on the other hand, has a heating potential of 121 degrees C above the clouds. It is hot enough to boil the oceans, were it not for a natural ventilation and air conditioning system of our atmosphere. So this is the big paradigm shift I'm trying to make here. Our atmosphere is not a blanket, but it's a giant air conditioning unit, a very powerful one. The lunacy of deleting the temperature contrast, especially that between the sun and the earth. By deleting 3/4 of the sun's power and violating energy conservation principle, there's no longer adequate temperature contrast for heat, i.e. energy transfer, from the sun. Energy must then be created from magic plant food and magic cow farts and burps. It really is that absurd. A return to the primitive by fooling people with averaging. Again, the misuse of words. It is absolutely senseless to divide the sun by 4. The total opposite of correct. One multiplies the Earth's infrared instead by 4. Yeah. So what we have here is a communist equalization of the sun to the Earth by dividing it by 4, which eliminates the temperature contrast necessary for adequate energy transfer from the sun. Whenever we talk about heat, it's always about energy transfer. It's a process defined by these equations shown here. It's not something that can be trapped. These are processes defined by equations. Now, the humongous latent heat capacity of water. Many good people erroneously categorize water vapor as a greenhouse gas. This is a terrible error. The water vapor in our atmosphere actually serves as its principal refrigerant, the opposite of a greenhouse gas. Water vapor carries a humongous amount of latent heat around the place, and when we encounter a high humidity, it feels hot, as it prevents our sweat from performing its function of evaporative cooling off our skin. In spite of what we feel humidity does to temperature, water vapor actually serves as a principal refrigerant in our atmosphere due to its humongous latent heat absorption capacity. So on this view graph, I show the actual latent heat capacity of 2,250,000 joules per kilogram. So if you just to envisage what it would, the amount of physical work it would take to evaporate a single liter bottle of water. Imagine having a winch, that had to lift, 2.2 million apples from a great big basket, and you had to lift it up 1 meter, and you'd have to crank on that winch probably for quite some time before you lifted all those apples up 1 meter. And that's all the work energy it requires to evaporate a single liter of water. The other energy absorbing gases, they absorb less, such as CO2 and methane, but they're way too scarce to be of any significance. The other gases also have heat capacity, heat capacity, and these could increase the magnitude of the lapse rate. They could cause warming, but again, the concentrations are way too low. So we have a weighting here of 4 to 10 to the minus 4, and it's just impossible to have any sizable effect. Another common error among even the good and the rational people. How many times have you been presented with these Planck curve depressions as proof of the greenhouse effect? It's actually proof of a refrigeration effect as energy gets absorbed into latent heat, rendering it unavailable as heat or work energy needed to raise temperature. The Stefan Boltzmann law is derived by math integration of Planck's law, the area underneath those curves. And it's not as difficult as it seems. You can actually get Grok to show you how it's done. And any reduction of this area equals a reduction of the enthalpy, the heat and work energy needed to generate temperature. Refrigeration is accomplished by using energy absorbing gaseous media in a compression, cooling, evaporation, warming cycle to artificially create a warm temperature to colder temperature contrast to extract energy from a space to be cooled. Carbon dioxide is actually used as an industrial coolant for certain applications. Yeah. A very similar cycle takes place via Earth's convection cells using mostly water vapor. The ultimate implication of performing a correct radiation energy balance is the realization that Earth's atmosphere is dominated by thermal energy transfer. This means our atmosphere serves as an energy conductor, not an energy barrier, an air conditioner, not a blanket. With the radiation energy balanced, we can begin analyzing the thermal effects caused by the sun's radiation. Thermal physics now applies. The enthalpy, the total energy principle in particular. And here I'll make reference to the enthalpy. And enthalpy is the total energy, and it's defined as the heat energy plus the work energy. Latent heat absorbs energy, thus we must subtract latent heat from the latent heat energy, from the enthalpy. This is the basic principle being applied herein. And so we have the basic thermal physics principle. Then we calculate the water vapor mass concentration at the surface with an assumed humidity, in this case, of 2.3%, which is right in the middle of the range of uncertainty. We quantify the amount of latent heat on the surface, and then we work out a gradient, assuming that it goes to zero at an average altitude of 10 kilometers in the atmosphere. And with that latent heat gradient, we can apply that underlying thermal physics principle together with conservation of energy, and to derive an average wet lapse rate, which is 6.5 degrees per kilometer. Yeah, and with this wet lapse rate, we can fully reconcile the 33 degrees surface heating without any greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is just totally redundant. It's not needed. Not only is it a lie, but it's just not needed. Already at the conclusion, all of the doom pornography we've been subjected to renders us vulnerable to undeserved guilt. We then willingly flagellate ourselves to seek redemption. This is not unprecedented in history, but it is unprecedented in scale, the misuse of modern technology. Is it scientific and ethical when people are exploited for the lack of familiarity in specific science topics? Or is it exploitative government welfare statism corrupting people with power lust, using gaslighting sophistry to enact a policy, i.e. the use of force, of legalized theft? Join the heresy and choose to fight against our growing totalitarianism. We are now realizing how free stuff from the government, i.e. the welfare state, has become the most expensive stuff there is in the universe. We need to find and vote for politicians more likely to downsize government to its proper role as a servant, existing to protect our individual rights. Without our ability to choose, there can be no morality. And I think that encapsulates the thinking of America's founding fathers when they created America. So in short, let the sun shine into your life. And the second page of conclusions. So in this real world, if there weren't any clouds, and if there wasn't any latent heating, or latent cooling, I should say, the sun could boil the oceans. The sun's 1,360 watts per meter square of power has a heating potential of 121 degrees C, not plus 5 degrees C. There is no energy imbalance. There never has been, there is not now, and there never will be. Joules of radiation in equals the joules of radiation out of Earth's climate system. Imbalance is imaginary. We're all being used for our unfamiliarity in these science topics. Yeah. Earth's atmosphere is an energy conductor, not a blanket. Below the tropopause, where all the weather exists, where we exist, energy transfer, which is heat, is dominated by thermal kinetic energy and by the low entropy radiation being delivered by the sun. And all observations can be easily reconciled via shortwave radiation from the sun. There is no greenhouse effect, nor are there any greenhouse gases. There are gases with heat capacity under the influence of gravity, and together this determines the adiabatic lapse rate, the change of temperature with altitude. And there's a very simple equation there that characterizes the dry adiabatic lapse rate. And then we have latent heat capacity, energy absorbed into latent heat, which serves as a refrigeration effect, reducing the amount of adiabatic heating. And again, characterized by an equation that's almost as simple, which is a reduction of the dry adiabatic lapse rate. And this produces a substantial refrigeration effect. It's why jungle regions during the daytime are substantially cooler than desert ones in the equivalent latitude. And finally, to the recommendation slide. Modern greenhouse effect theory has a lot of crazy implications, but its most basic fallacy is a sun whose power is only 1/4 of what it really is. It is a fraud, or perhaps it's maybe an attempted blunder cover-up, which is a possibility, that makes the theory into a mystical voodoo religious dogma. It is not science. Climate religion is Platonic, while real science is Aristotelian. This means climate religion is mystical. Reality is created based upon feelings. And real science is based on reason. So actual reality is interpreted based on facts using long established scientific principles, such as the laws of thermodynamics and enthalpy. British Enlightenment, British European Enlightenment, along with America's founding, were the effect of Aristotelian methods and ideas that were part of the education in those days. An education that needs to be restored in this modern day, and that could easily be disseminated in a secondary school social studies curriculum. Yeah? This stuff about ancient Greece and its meaning is not hard, it's rather straightforward. A more appropriate enforcement of First Amendment law, in my opinion, is to legally categorize the greenhouse effect theory as a religion, which it actually is, and to thus ban any policy existing or in development that is premised on religion. In my opinion, America's First Amendment law is the most important law ever created and instituted by man. We have to make use of it, especially the Americans among you who have the benefit of existing under that law. So what we're existing today is this religion where this Earth's atmosphere is a heat trapping blanket under the minus 18 degrees Celsius cold sun, a sun that gives you frostbites essentially. Well, in this real world, our atmosphere is an energy conducting air conditioning unit under a very hot 121 degrees Celsius hot sun that tends to give people sunburns. So we got to get rid of the religion and get back into the science. And this is the end of my talk, but I want to just show the bibliography and two particular points in it. I'd like to encourage people to explore. The first is the History of Philosophy presented by Leonard Peikoff. It's a course online. In total, it's 36 hours long. So it's multiple modules over a long period of time with a lot of exams in between, but it is extremely enlightening. I strongly encourage the members of your audience to take a look at this because it's very well put together. It is free and it'll empower you. It'll make you more intelligent than before you saw this. Yeah. The second one is an article, not a very long one, about secular objective morality by Craig Biddle of the Objective Standard. And here he writes an essay that very eloquently describes the morality of rational egoism that as a society we all need to start gravitating towards. So Tom, I'd like to thank you 1,000 times. In Italian, we say grazie mille. Yeah, for giving me the opportunity to appear upon your platform and to your audience. Any audience members planning a trip to Italy the first time are welcome to get in touch with me. Turns out that I'm a pretty good tour guide as well as being an engineer. Ciao a tutti e buona giornata da Italia.
you really do have a arch in your city that is from 27 BC. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, the arch was actually built in the 3rd or 4th century BC, but Emperor Augustus carved his name on the top of it when the Roman Republic converted into becoming a Roman Empire. The point I wanted to make there: republics are very good. A law, let's say a republic that's based on the rule of law is a very good and beautiful thing, and it's something that we all need to fight and defend for. But we have to become very careful that it doesn't become a dictatorship, or especially a welfare state.
And then, according to your calculations, the Earth with no atmosphere, would that be at 121 C, or what would that number be?
And the moon on its equator during the day is at 121 degrees C. It would be, to me, in my opinion, it'd be very much like the moon without an atmosphere.
All right. And then how much do you need to know about the atmospheres on other planets to try to use your calculations to figure out the real temperature and make it match?
How much do you need to know the atmospheres of other planets?
Yeah.
To be honest, I would argue not that much. You just need to know physics, the laws of thermodynamics, and the principles of enthalpy. So that the laws of enthalpy, and that covers it basically. Very good knowledge of the first and second laws, and as well the application of thermal physics, especially the total energy, the enthalpy.
But maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but wouldn't you need to know something about the composition of the atmosphere on Mars, for example, to try to figure out how the air conditioning works on that planet?
Right.
Yeah.
I would argue that the composition doesn't matter that much. What matters more is the heat capacity of what the atmosphere is, and the amount of gravity there is. Because the adiabatic heating is just a very simple relation, It's just negative G over Cp, the gravity divided by the heat capacity of the gas. And in one of those slides, I detail how that negative G over Cp is derived.
All right. And then you did say right at the end that using your calculations, you can, the lapse rate on Earth makes sense, right?
Yes.
Calculations as we go up, that all makes sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you go to the desert regions of the Earth, the lapse rate is the negative G over Cp. That's the dry adiabatic lapse rate. There's no latent heat. And then when you go to a more tropical region with a lot more humidity, that latent heat essentially acts against gravity. And it makes the lapse rate less, and you end up with a cooling effect on the Earth's surface.
All right. And as you look around at other climate realists doing work in the same area, is there anybody whose work you like more than others?
Well, I especially like yours and the whole audience that you're doing, what you're doing here, Tom, with the people with their different perspectives. And I may not agree with 100% with all of them, but I think all of us are on the same team. We're all aiming for the right thing to preserve real science. And so I like anybody who's willing to stand up against the consensus groupthink.
Okay, but of the people that are really looking into the details of the greenhouse effect versus lack of it, out of those people that are really doing similar work to try to figure that out,
I think the words greenhouse effect need to be eradicated from our vocabulary. It's a misuse of language again. We're being mind controlled by misuse of language. There's indeed energy absorbing gases. All gases absorb energy. Every gas, all matter absorbs energy. All matter has a heat capacity. So that's energy absorption. And then you have special compounds like water, for example, that has a huge latent heat capacity, which is also a massive amount of energy absorption. So we're just being assaulted by perverse language, and I think the word greenhouse effect, in my opinion, just has to be eradicated from our vocabulary, and we have to become more specific with our definitions and to work that way. So so I might be in disagreement with some people, but I think I'm capable of judging people who are trying to be rational and good, and these are people I could live with and I could debate with. And even be friends with, But I think you've encountered a lot of monsters in this world. It doesn't matter, how good or how much sense you're making. They're just out there to try to kill you, basically.
Oh, any other points you want to make before we finish up here?
Not really. I think this is a big challenge. I'm trying to unify religion, philosophy, and then science. Hopefully I was able to successfully link how real science is linked to proper philosophy, and how fake science is linked to something more corrupted. I also want to make the point about morality. Morality is vitally important, but for most people associate morality with religion, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Islam. I think we have to grow up beyond that. It's actually morality is actually based on fact and on reasoning. And that one article I showed in the bibliography goes into a lot more. It's very well written, and I encourage people to read that. So I think, America's people are the most moral people. They're people on this world, and it's because of Aristotelian influences, not so much because of Christianity, but because of the Aristotelian influences to Christianity. And the same applies to the Jews as well too.
In the show description, I will put your Twitter handle, your X handle will be in there, and I'll put a link to your PDF so people can go through your slides and that would be super. Okay. All right, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate your work.
It was very much my pleasure to do this, Tom. Thank you very much.